Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Political Fixer Live. We are coming to you with up to the minute updates because there is just so much to talk about. All right, we are going to have a great show for you. To those of you who are new to Political Fixer Live, let me explain how it works. So, we're going to be bringing you some of the top stories of the week. Some of that might be some of the things that we're talking about the most, but some of it could be, and that's definitely the case tonight, things that the media is missing, that they're not talking about enough. So our top stories definitely have a blend of the two. And this story was actually selected by you guys last week. You asked me to pick the topic for next week centered around special elections that are happening across the country. And so we're going to be talking about four key races that you need to know about and some really salacious gossip that I uncovered in the process. So if I've got to pick a theme, it's definitely special elections and the huge impact they could be having on the shutdown that we're all experiencing right now of our government. But if I got to pick a backup theme, I got to tell you, it's gossip. It is just gossip, gossip, gossip. They need to have a real House husbands of Congress or something, because this is some petty stuff going back and forth. And the thing is, it's this type of bickering that prevents things from people from getting things done. Now, you might be thinking, well, yeah, but Democrats, Republicans, they've been fighting since the beginning of time. I'm not talking about them. I am talking about Republicans bickering with Republicans, and it is getting very salacious, and it is starting to break down any concept we have of talks of opening up this government and moving things forward. And there's some surprises we might see as things start to unveil upon all of us with these special elections. Daddy Mac is saying, I want more Laura Loomer versus MTG. Yes, Marjorie Taylor Greene. We're going to be talking about her in this program, Marjorie Taylor Greene, because she could end up becoming a key figure for the Democrats. You heard that right. I mentioned this a little bit in last week's show, but now there's been some new developments and it's getting even uglier on that side of the aisle. I want to welcome, before we dive into our top stories, all of our Political Fixer family members. Those of you who regularly tune in, thank you so much. We're already at over 1,000 likes. I see Kelly, I see Jolie, I see Candace, I see so many people that are hopping on Kathy McGrath Walcott, so many of our Political Fixer family members. And of course, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the actual people that run this show while I just sit here and give you guys all of the hard work here that they would help me put together. I want to say a special thank you to Sarah, our chief of staff and producer. Many of you know Sarah. And then, of course, Jay Robot, who makes sure that everybody stays and plays nicely with each other. Okay. So we're going to start talking about the shutdown. That's going to be our first big story. And we're going to talk a little bit about what's actually going on, because there's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of misinformation. And honestly, there's a lot of outright lies. So the big question I wanted answered, that I needed to dig down, as much as I have worked on the Hill and as much as I've been working in politics, I needed a straight answer. What would it take for the government to actually open back up? So we're going to go through that, and we're going to talk about what's happening, what that fighting is really about. And then that leads not so indirectly to the special elections that you guys asked that I cover. And so we're going to be talking about a couple of key races and key incidences that have happened and are happening across the country, and how you can get involved. And I got to tell you, there's some things happening in days. So you're definitely going to want to hear what these races are and why they could matter more than we even realize. And then, if we have some time, I'd love to share another salacious story that's happening with a special election that there's a legal battle, there's gossip, and it involves one of our favorite governors to bop upside the head around here, and that is Ron DeSantis of Florida. So we've got a lot of ground to cover. And of course, as usual, we're going to be taking your questions, comments, suggestions, and your feedback into this conversation. Now, I'm going to warn you right now, This is going to involve like a little bit of math, but not too much. But I had to double check everything, and you're going to see why the math matters here as we start getting into the special election and seatings and not seatings. But we're going to take it one step at a time, and let's start right now by just trying to break down what is happening. Why is our government actually shut down? And what would it take for it to open back up again? Because if you're confused, you're not alone. It is extremely confusing. So let's start from the beginning. Government is shut down. It has been what, around 14 days, I believe, as of today, 14 days. And we're going to talk about the impact of that in just a second. Yeah, 14 days and counting. And right now, the House needs a simple majority. Thank you for the flower crown. Love that. The House needs a simple majority in order to pass some of the budget that we need to stay open. Basically, this comes down to money and how are we going to spend it, right? Now, there's a lot of distraction and side topics that we could go into, but at its core, it's about money. And so on the House side of Congress, you just need a simple majority, and you could pass a huge budget or appropriations bill, or you could pass a small one that just lasts for like a month or two called a CR, or a continuing resolution, right? But here's where it gets tricky. Republicans have those numbers in the House for now, and we're going to talk about that in just a bit. They have those numbers in the House, but when it gets to the Senate also has to say yes, and they need 60 votes on that same piece of legislation, small or large. And Republicans only have, what is it, 53 members in the Senate. So you need Democratic votes in order for this to go through. All right. And I want to thank, is that Stacy and also Robin Kennington for all of the kind words, and you guys are sharing the live. I really appreciate it. And also all of the gifting and likes. Thank you so much. So bear with me here because I think this is important for us to understand. So right now what's happening is we only need a simple majority in the House. So Republicans could keep cranking out things as long as they can agree with each other. They need 218, they've got 219. As long as they play nicely together, they can keep cranking out different pieces of legislation. But when it goes to the Senate is batting it right back down like a cat with a ball of yarn. What's the reason? Well, the main reason is because of healthcare. Because right now, Republicans would like to just keep the government open a bit, basically fund only the things that people are noticing or are their pet projects, and basically kick the can on the healthcare subsidies and the funding for different healthcare that's going to expire at the end of this calendar year. So there's a huge argument back and forth. House Republicans are saying, listen, let's just keep it going. We'll talk about healthcare later. And Democrats, known for falling for things quite regularly, I might add, this time are not falling for it. They're not falling for the no, trust us, we'll have the conversation later routine. They really wanted to keep the government open the last time, and so they went along with Republicans on this, and it frustrated some of us. But this time, not so fast, my friend. Okay, this is a huge discussion point. Do you think that the government should stay open right now, no matter what, and then deal with healthcare as a separate issue? Or do you think that Democrats are right to keep the government shut down until healthcare is discussed now because of the harm it will cause at the end of the year? I want to hear from you now on what your thoughts are. Should the government stay shut down so until healthcare is dealt with, or should we open it back up and deal with healthcare later? Then I'm going to tell you some facts on both sides. We're going to paint both sides of the picture with some numbers, not just vibes, but numbers. And I want to hear what your thoughts are on about that. Say hello, 60 is saying, what is that about Florida's governor? Say hello. That is me teasing a story we're going to cover after we cover the shutdown, and then also after we cover the special elections. There is a scandal brewing in Florida. That's an evergreen statement, but this one has to deal with special elections. So we're going to talk about it. So I'm looking at your comments now, and I see a lot of, first of all, a lot of all caps. So you guys feel very strongly about this. So I'm seeing a lot of shutdown, keep the shutdown going. It's like Charlie Brown, Lucy, and the football, according to Square Foot Gardening for You. I love that. Keep it closed until there's a resolution. That is Nev. We've got Mary saying shut it down. And then, so Stacy, I want some clarification. You say, yes, now open enrollment is coming. So Stacy, could you clarify those comments for me on what you mean when you say yes now, meaning open it now, or talk to us a little bit about what you mean with that. Chillin is also saying that. Discuss it now. Oh, discuss the healthcare now. Got it. Discuss the healthcare now because open enrollment plans are rolling out at the end of this month. So what you're saying, if I'm understanding you right, is we can't afford to not talk about healthcare now because its impact is right around the corner for some folks, right? That they are going to need to enroll in a different plan soon. And so they need answers. If I'm understanding you, if I'm misinterpreting you, then definitely let me know. Graceful Vegan is saying healthcare first. Aunt Molly is saying Democrats are right. MX Kimber saying shut it down, stay shut down. We've got a lot of shutdowns. And a good evening to Veronica Kennard as well. Thank you for walking into a heated discussion here. So Mary's saying can't enroll, there won't be healthcare, right? So, okay. So this is really important conversation. I find it interesting. And obviously our audience tends to skew more center and then center left. So, not all of you are as far left as I am, but our audience does tend to skew center and center left. But yet we've got a lot of people agreeing that we keep it shut down. Let me tell you, I just want to play devil's advocate. Why does the devil need an advocate? We're going to do devil's advocate. And I see Lewis A. White saying, no, Democrats are correct. We should not open the government if we are going to kick 14 million off of healthcare. All right, we're going to talk about healthcare more in just a second. But let me again play devil's advocate here. Right now, we have people who are being impacted by this shutdown already with their paychecks, their services, etc. So let me just say that this is not just about, oh, I can't get access to certain, toll-free government service lines, or a couple of my favorite museums are shut down. The impact to a lot of these people is real, and it impacts the economy as well. So right now, I want to clarify what is happening with our military veterans and active forces. So members of the military are required to serve during the shutdown because, of course, they're considered essential. They are defending our nation, but they're not getting paid right now. And this last Monday, yesterday, was a big deadline because that was the day that paychecks were supposed to be cut. And my understanding is they were not, but anyone can correct me there. In fact, the House wasn't even in session. Nothing was moving. And so you've got veterans that and active members of the military that are not receiving their paychecks, as I understand it. In fact, I was seeing news footage of military members standing in food service lines, food pantry lines, and my blood started to boil. I had to get up, leave the computer, and walk away because here's the thing. The political gamesmanship here on the Republican side, they could be fixing this, and instead they're just protecting high-end tax cuts and allowing them to not get paid to go hungry, to need a food pantry, which is an awful way to treat anyone, but it's particularly disgraceful when you're talking about the men and women in our military. And that's me inserting my bias here, but it's not saying give Democrats everything they want. What I'm saying is do your job and get back to the Hill. Get back to DC. They're not even in session. They're not even in town, most of them, and that is disgraceful. All right. So that's one issue. One issue that affects non-military people, if you like to fly or need to fly for business, impact of TSA agents and air traffic controllers. Right now, they are considered to be essential. However, there's about 13,000 essential controllers and tens of thousands of TSA workers, but then there's also 11,000 non-critical workers that have been furloughed, put on suspension at airports across the country. So if they're not exactly an air traffic controller or exactly a TSA agent, and they're right below that line of critical, then they're being put basically on hold and told not to come to work. All right. Airports operate on like the thread of inefficiency on a good day. Like anyone who's been to an airport anytime in the last year knows that they are barely functional, and that's with everyone working. And we just chopped off 11,000 of them. Right now, staffing shortages and morale issues are driving 53% of flight delays. Here's something fun. FAA inspections, is the airplane okay? Those reviews are being delayed or suspended. So that's awesome for everyone involved. And right now, there's a ripple effect because with different people, flights delayed, people hesitant to fly because they're seeing stuff on the news, they're already estimating that travel sectors are taking a $1 billion hit per week in revenue. $1 billion per week that the government shuts down. Overall, our GDP continues to shrink the longer this is going on. You have hundreds of thousands of federal workers across the country that are furloughed, and there's different programs that are being disrupted. Let's give a real world another example. And again, I'm just trying to present the other side of how serious this is and how we need to be mindful and respectful of what everyone's going through in the shutdown. So, one of the places that my family has traveled before is a beautiful place in Colorado, outside of Rocky Mountain National Park, called Estes Park. And Estes Park is a touristy town at the base of the mountains. Gorgeous if you ever get a chance to go. But that town exists to serve the tourism for Rocky Mountains National Park, right? It's that's what people are there for. They're there to see the mountains, see the elk, see a waterfall or snow, depending on the season. That's why it exists. And if you were to go to the Rocky Mountain National Park website, which I did right before coming on the air here, you would see a giant red banner that says that certain services are disrupted, that certain parts of the park are closed. There's all these warnings because of the shutdown. So now you have people not going. You have people canceling their reservations because they don't know if they go there if they're actually going to be able to get in and see the mountains. And we might open back up, we might not open back up, but here's the tricky thing. Snow doesn't wait. And the season for Estes Park is considered mid-October. So even if they open back up right now, the past 14 days plus this week, what businesses, what shops, what hotels, what restaurants can miss 3 weeks without revenue? Most small businesses cannot do that. And that's one tiny example of one tiny town outside of one national park out of all of them. Those are real world examples. So Democrats and Republicans know the stakes, and yet Republicans are choosing not to go to work, and Democrats are standing firm saying healthcare doesn't matter. All right, let's present the other side. All right. Okay. The other side, because some of you are like, yes, but healthcare. Okay, you're right. Let's talk about both sides. I just want to be fair in the discussion and say that the shutdown has real impact for real people. All right. You know what also has real impact for real people? Being able to see a doctor before you die. That also has real impact for real people. Okay, all seriousness. If these subsidies expire, these are real current numbers on what we're expecting. Who will be impacted? At least 4.8 and up to 10 million that we know of, people are expected to lose their healthcare coverage. Why is there such a big spread? Why is it 4 million or 10 million? Because what happens is the healthcare is going to get more expensive. If the government isn't paying part of it, then that means you have to pay all of it. And so it gets more expensive. So how many people are going to dig deep and make some sacrifices and be able to keep that healthcare? And how many people are not going to be able to do that and are just going to drop off? That's the magic question. And we don't know. But the estimates are anywhere between 4 to over 10 million people that, bam, they don't have health care anymore. The hardest hit states will be Texas, Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, South Carolina, Louisiana, Mississippi, and West Virginia. Anyone want to tell me what those states have in common? I'm going to name them again: Texas, Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, South Carolina, Louisiana, Mississippi, West Virginia, right? They're all red. They all voted for Republican representation, and now they are going to be the hardest hit. And I think this is an important point because there's a lot of both sides are the same, right? Like both sides, they both do things. Democrats right now are willing to take in the Senate are willing to take a PR hit. They are gambling on this shutdown. They know the impacts and more. I just named this bit of impacts on the shutdown. They know what's about to hit them. If they wanted to do gamesmanship, they could say, listen, our states are fine. We've got money. Our state governments could help subsidize. This isn't our problem. You voted for him. This is your issue. But they're not. And I think that's really important that we not lose sight of this, because this isn't a Democrat versus Republican voter issue. Real humans on all sides of the political spectrum, including those that never ever vote, they still deserve to not die because they can't access a doctor in time to their needs. And if that sounds like, oh, that's just an exaggeration, it's just an increase in costs. No, let me tell you, the average the average premium for people, the average cost is expected to at least double, if not triple. How many of us can absorb that type of bill for anything right now? I mean, many people are canceling Netflix if it goes up $2, right? People cannot just absorb thousands and thousands of dollars a year for most people. The other thing is that it's not just people that use the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare or Medicaid. They're not the only ones impacted, because if there's less money there, then there's less income for things like hospitals and nursing homes and birthing centers. And so if they don't have that extra income, they start to close. Right now, the hospitals are expected to absorb at least $2 billion of bills that are just not going to get paid next year. $32 billion when you count all types of providers across the country. They're expecting, particularly in rural and safety net areas, that hospitals are just going to close, that they're just going to disappear, as will certain types of nursing homes that rely on Medicaid. And we listed this stat before, but nearly 80% of pregnancies utilize some sort of Medicaid benefit of some type or government benefit of some type. Nearly 80%. So we're talking about average premiums going up by a significant, crazy amount. We're talking about millions of people not having access to insurance. And so what happens if you absolutely have to see someone right now and you don't have insurance? You go to the emergency room, and then there's no one to pay that bill, which means the hospitals lose even more money. And for all of us, it's going to create havoc. It's going to drive all of our costs up. The doctors are going to mark up those bills. The hospitals are going to mark up those bills. This impacts everyone. And that is the reason why, even with all of the stuff going on and the dangerous game that we're playing with so many people's lives and the government agencies on the shutdowns and the TSA and the military, some people still believe it's worth it to save millions and millions of people's healthcare, right? Okay. um so someone is saying Dems are cutting. What are Dems cutting exactly? So there's all kinds of care. Republicans fund rural hospitals, Dems cut that. All right, if you could give us a source on that, I would like to see it. So far what we're seeing is a Republican signed bill, the big ugly bill from before, or big beautiful bill depending on your persuasion, that is going to defund these healthcare subsidies in exchange for tax breaks for the wealthiest people that realistically can pay for it. So, but if you have something that is a bill where Democrats are actually cutting healthcare costs, and show it to us, show your work there. Okay. So all right. Let's put this into context. This shutdown, it's a little bit surreal because life keeps going, chaos keeps going. 47 still holding news conferences almost every day. It feels like the government is still open in some ways if you're not one of those families that's impacted the most. If you're not someone that's missing a paycheck or got furloughed or isn't able to do something that you normally would, whether it's receive a service or travel somewhere that you were planning to go. If it's not impacting you directly, it might feel like the government is still open because they're still all yapping it up in front of TV cameras all across the country, right? Let's put this into perspective. So prior to this, there were five shutdowns, like five major shutdowns of the government. All right. There was one under Bill Clinton because there was a budget fight in 95. That was 6 days. There was another one in Bill Clinton in 95. The next month, I guess they did a continuing resolution for 5 days because They wanted to negotiate that again. Then another, this was a fun time apparently. I must have missed this because I was goofing off. I had just graduated. So December of 95, after that continuing temporary budget wore off, then they really got serious. And there was a battle between Bill Clinton and Speaker Newt Gingrich with budget cuts, and that shutdown lasted 21 days. Now, what was the ultimate result of that shutdown for those of us that might not remember that far back, or some of you that are too young to be around for that far back? Basically, it cost the Republicans a lot politically. Newt Gingrich ended up losing a lot of political capital. They ended up losing a bunch of seats in Congress right after that. It backfired against Republicans. So those are three of the top 5 shutdowns in our American history. All right. All under Bill Clinton with the same back and forth battle. There was a shutdown under Barack Obama for 16 days. And that was when Republicans demanded that the Affordable Care Act be defunded. Wow, that's familiar. So, like what we're doing right now. So, that shutdown lasted 16 days. It was under President Obama, and it was in 2013 where they wanted to again defund Obamacare. What we're talking about right now, which is reducing the budget that is set aside to fund people who use these healthcare subsidies. That's what this all means. It's the same record produced 12 years later. All right. Then the top shutdown of all time, when 47 was 45 and he wanted to build the wall with Mexico, okay, anyway, so that shutdown lasted 35 days. That was the longest shutdown ever in American history, and that was under 47 when he was 45 in end of 2018, first part of 2019. So right now, historically, no one wins in a shutdown, but definitely someone can lose more. That's where we're at. Nobody wins, but someone can lose more. You might want to talk about it from a political perspective. If you want to talk about it from a political perspective, the polling is saying that the message that Republicans control the White House, the Senate, and Congress, and the government is shut down, so therefore it's Republicans' fault, that is resonating with people. That is resonating, and by far, a majority of Americans blame Republicans for the shutdown as of today. Things could always change, right? Um, as far as if you want to look at it from an economic perspective, we haven't seen the impact of this yet. The trickle down of the impact of the shutdown has not hit us yet. People going without paychecks, federal contracts being delayed, people not being able to get permits and things that they need, furloughed families buying less. There's so much tourism taking a hit. We don't know the economic impact of this yet. We're just getting started. So if you want to look at the economics of that, stay tuned. We're going to feel the trickle down effects of that for weeks and months, if not years to come, right? And then if you're looking at what is happening right now, Republicans have been introducing continuing resolutions to say, listen, let's just pay our essential things and let's not deal with healthcare right now. And you have Democrats saying in the Senate saying, whoa, we do want to deal with healthcare right now. This has now happened 7 times. This Wile E. Coyote Roadrunner back and forth has happened 7 times. Okay, so we're going to get into how that math might actually change. And that relates to the story that you guys wanted me to cover with the special election. So again, this stuff is confusing. There's no easy answer. Like, no one wins. It's who loses least, or can we stop the bleeding? I guess in some cases, literally here, right? So Elle, let's hear what you think. So I tried to present both sides of, listen, the harm of the shutdown versus the harm that people will face without these healthcare subsidies, without any of our budget going to actually keeping Americans healthy, then what will happen to real people, right? So what are your thoughts right now before we pivot to the special election and some crazy drama and gossip and how some of these numbers might change? So I've got El Bougie's 56 saying the truth is all of this is on the Republican Party. We've got some back and forth conversation on stuff. The Senate can repeal the filibuster and pass it by a simple majority, according to Aunt Molly. Yes, there's all kinds of things that the Senate could do. The Senate could also take one of these bills and etch a sketch it and erase a bunch of stuff and then draft their own stuff, basically their own revisions, and then they could give it to the House and say, here, pass this. There's a lot of things that could happen. In order for those things to happen, conversation and negotiations have to happen. That's point one. And point two, those conversations should probably be with each other instead of running to the press and slamming each other, right? So yeah, it would be good if they got together and had conversations with each other. But what's happening instead is they're bickering on social media. So we're not seeing any of that progress, right? I want to bring up what Kristen is saying with the Department of Special Education. Great point, Kristen. We found out that during this shutdown, and honestly, they've been very clear with Doge and in other situations, they were planning these cuts no matter what, that they're just taking a red pen. Is it legal? Is it not legal? Who can say? What are laws at this point? And just cutting things they don't like, what they call democratic programs. And interestingly enough, apparently having a special needs child that would like to also be educated is a democratic only problem, according to this administration, because they very gleefully cut nearly every service in the Department of Education having to do with special needs children. So that's an interesting take. I wasn't aware that only special needs children only live in blue states. Oh, wait, they don't. So once again, we're using the most vulnerable communities and denying them services, care, basic essential needs, and dignity in order to feed billionaire monsters, right? So it's just, I don't understand here because we did a talk and a training, and this is a slight pivot, but bear with me here. We do this training around the country, and the punchline of the training is that the most persuadable group of voters, you talk about hardcore Republicans, hardcore Democrats, right? And the most persuadable group of voters are in the middle, that they either decide who they're going to vote for closer to the election, or they decide if they're going to vote in this election. And that biggest group of persuadable voters are middle aged women. And if you want to convince a woman to get involved in an issue, take something from her child. I, I I don't understand this from a humanity perspective. I don't understand it from, an ethics perspective. How can people say, like, swear that they're protecting their constituents and then rip those types of services away from people who desperately need them? And I don't understand it from a political perspective. I really don't, because if you want to get women paying attention, I know a lot of women with special needs children, they'll be paying attention if they can't get the services that they're used to. Good point, Kristen, and bringing that up, right? Okay. So we're going to talk about, one of you brought up no kings, and Mackenzie echoing this, the Department of Education being gutted within an inch of his life. Um, Judges are, Brianna May is correct. The judges are telling them they cannot cut and fire them. Yes, we're going to be saying this. Yeah, it will be challenged in court. So, all right. So people are asking, what can we do? So we're watching this frustratingly from the sidelines. So let's talk briefly about No Kings. I will tell you. So I try to shout out any of you that have different events, whether it's something big like No Kings, but sometimes you guys share with me different local things that are happening in your community that people can join into, or things that you're working on that are ideas that we can share with the group. And we try to pass that on as much as possible. And we mention it in passing, or we might give you a website or something like that. But I want to spend just 2 minutes talking about No Kings this particular time. And I want to tell you that it's not just because, I don't really love exercise, that I'm not really a protest girl. I like to boycott things. I like to do trainings. But me walking out in Florida sun, waving a sign with a bunch of other people, just not really my vibe most of the time. I celebrate it. I've done it, right? I did that, women's march, I've done it. But if you ask me, my form of political protest doesn't tend to be hitting the streets. We all have our different things that we do, but I celebrate it and we highlight it and we need it desperately, right? I'm going to tell you, if you are someone that's like, this isn't what I normally do, protests aren't really for me, I would ask you to reconsider for this one. And let me tell you a few reasons why. The No Kings organization is helping to organize another protest series of marches across the country. And correct me if I'm wrong, because I know some of you are really engaged in organizing this stuff. And again, I celebrate that. I try to support it as much as I can. Um, October 18th is the next one. And let me tell you, the protests do change the media dynamic. They do cause reporting to change. Aunt Molly points out it gets their attention. Yoli, I hate it, but I have to do it. All right. If you're wondering why I'm saying this one is different, then I'm going to tell you they have spent all week calling these protests anti-American. There is nothing more American than freedom of speech and the right to peacefully assemble. There is nothing more American than that. Speaking out against your government without being tasered, pepper sprayed, detained, having your job taken away. That is supposed to be what America is. So we firstly need to completely reject that notion and take back that narrative of what being American democracy is supposed to be. That's point one. Point two, they're calling us terrorists. Anyone who is speaking out against them, they're calling us Antifa, which, point of order, is short for anti-fascist. So yay, Antifa, right here, anti-fascist, proudly. So was my grandfather, who fought in World War II against fascism, but whatever. Okay, but they're putting all these scary labels. They actually had elected congressional representatives and members of the cabinet comparing going to these protests with supporting Hamas. I mean, think about that. Think about the actual incidences that we have just been reminded of with the release of these hostages. Think about the bloodshed and the awful incidences that continue to happen with Hamas. And then you're comparing marching on the street, holding a sign to that. That is fear based rhetoric. It is gaslighting. It is highly inappropriate for any elected official that has any responsibility to their duly elected representation. That's just absolutely outrageous, right? So that brings me to point three. They wouldn't be getting so mad if they weren't so worried. So some of you said this will get their attention. It's a tactic, right? Like, yes, it is. And if they were not concerned about this, they would not be talking about it. So if you're going to do this, here are some key things to stay safe. Now, No Kings has some amazing information. Indivisible has put together some great information, but you're sitting here talking with me, and I feel this responsibility deep in my heart that I want to just give you a few quick things to keep you safe if you go, right? First of all, don't give them your angry eyes, right? If any of you have watched Toy Story with Mrs. Potato Head, I want you to not pack your angry eyes, all right? The signs can be, biting. You can be witty. You can criticize him. You can curse at him. Fine. But be mindful that there's going to be cameras at all angles, not just the news, but everyone has a phone. And so don't give them fuel to that fire when they're trying to paint us as something that we're not. So just be mindful that the cameras are always running. Don't pack your angry eyes. Go out there with whatever message you want, but just don't let people agitate you, because there will be agitators. I'm almost 100% sure of that. That brings me to point two. If anything looks, smells, or even feels a little weird, leave. Just go. Just walk the other way. Don't run. Don't freak out. Just slowly walk to another part of the parade or wherever. Just go to another part of town. Or if you really feel gross, just go to your car. You showed up. You're good. Do not put yourself in any harm's way. Do not go towards something. For the love of Pete, do not try to get closer to something just so you can get it on TikTok. All right. So stay peaceful no matter what. Right. And please either go with a friend or talk to a friend that you make there. Just someone that's like got an eye on you, that's making sure if someone creepy is behind you and you didn't notice it, or if, just go with a buddy if you can. And of course, the mom in me is like, hydrate, pack snacks, remember where you parked. All of those apply as if you're going to a Beyonce concert. But, just be mindful out there. That being said, send me your best signs. I am going to be traveling. I'm going to try to make it. I'm going to try to get other people to make it. Again, this is not normally my bag, but I'm going to try because I think this is really important. So definitely, you can go to nokings.org. I know some of you are, and listen, if you can withstand the heat and it's not too late to drop ship yourself something or run to the Halloween section of your favorite store, Those inflatable costumes and other costumes are highly effective at deflating their little narrative that we're just these, satanic terrorism creatures. Like, it's really hard to get mad at a frog and a unicorn with a bubble machine. So, you don't have to go full inflatable, but if you want to go wear that costume while you're holding that F Trump sign, knock yourselves out. It's highly effective if that's your vibe. All right. Now, let's pivot to special elections. For those of you just joining us, welcome to Political Fixer Live. We're talking about the shutdown and the heart-wrenching conversations that we're having to have as a nation where, this idea of scarcity, like, do we pay government workers or do we have healthcare? I just want to end that conversation really quickly by saying that's a false choice. They're creating that false choice and they want us to bicker with each other so that we continue to feed the wealthiest among us while we're distracted. That is a fault. We have enough money to do this. If we can give $20 billion to Argentina, we have enough money to pay our veterans. We have enough money to start looking at these healthcare subsidies with some sort of seriousness. So just wanted to point that out. There's not really a real reason that we're doing this except for priorities. So don't let anyone tell you that we don't have the money. I mean, we have money for a golden ballroom. All right. Let's talk about these special elections. The government is still shut down. But is it possible that Democrats could take the reins in the House with some of these conversations? I'm not saying midterms. I'm not saying they're going to get a majority right now, but hear me out. There's been some interesting soap opera like developments that changed these numbers this week. I promised you to go easy on the math. I'll keep that promise, but just bear with me here. I want you to keep in mind a few numbers as we go through here. Right now, if you are confused as to how many people are serving and what capacity in Congress, you're not alone. And one of the reasons is because Congress itself is not updating their own website on who's in Congress. If you go to congress.gov, it's wrong. It's flat out wrong. It's a really great sign as a top tier nation when Wikipedia is more accurate than your actual government. I mean, so I verified and cross verified, but as per usual, if any of you have corrected numbers or information, let me know. So here's the current math. The current math is that right now we have 219 Republicans. We have 213 Democrats, so we're down 6, and technically 3 vacancies. Now, why do I say technically? Because as some of you might know who join us on this program regularly or who follow this type of incident regularly, this type of news, there was a special election last month in Arizona for Congress because Raul Grijalva passed away and his daughter Adelita ran and shellacked the competition. This was not a short, close race. This was not something where they needed to count and recount. No, she won handily, like 70% or something crazy like that. So Grijalva won in Arizona over a month ago, and yet she hasn't been sworn in. So if Grijalva gets sworn in, then the numbers go up and it's 219 to 214. Now, let me tell you an update on Grijalva for those of you that have been following the story. So Mike Johnson has been stalling in swearing her in. She went to DC and he was like, "Oh, so sorry, conflict. I don't have time," and like scurried away. So the Attorney General of Arizona filed a letter that threatened a lawsuit if their representative was not sworn in, saying, "Listen, we don't have adequate representation as a state right now. You have to swear her in." So I want to get the name. That's what I'm looking at right now. So the name of the Arizona AG is Kris Mayes, which I believe stands for Kristen. I know it's a female AG in Arizona. So she sent a letter, and forgive me, it was 3 weeks ago that Grijalva won. And in the letter, I want to quote this one paragraph because it was pretty scathing. She said, "You," meaning Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, "you and your staff have provided ever-shifting, unsatisfactory, and sometimes absurd stories as to why Ms. Grijalva has not been sworn in a particularly worrisome comment An aide connected to the swearing in said that the admission would be tied to the ongoing budget fight, suggesting that the House is trying to use Arizona's constitutional right to representation in the House as a bargaining chip. The shorter way to say that, you're trying to hold this swearing in hostage because you're trying to get something in this negotiation for the shutdown. You see how all these stories are tied together? So they threatened legal action if Johnson fails to seat Grijalva immediately. Now, why would he not seat her? Listen, he's a squirrely little dude. There's a lot of reasons it could be, but let's go over the top two. Number one, they swear her in. The budget fight gets even closer. Now they can only afford to lose 5 votes. And some Republicans are already starting to vote against these House measures. They don't like the shutdown. They don't like the spending. They're worried about medical costs. We're going to cover that in just a second. So that would make it 219 to 214. And those of you that have been watching, you all know I'm seeing it right now. Epstein files. Because Republicans, some of them, a few of them, very few, have crossed over and signed a petition, a House petition, demanding the Department of Justice and also the Financial Committee, and this is big because you've got to trace the money with this stuff, that they release the files related to the Epstein cases, and that the only things that should be redacted are things to protect the names and identities of the victims, not the perpetrators of the abuse. Now, that petition needs one more signature, and then that clock starts. And a whole set of dominoes starts to topple one way or the other. And people are either going to have to move on this or work really hard, really publicly to keep it quiet for longer. And Grijalva has already said that she will happily be the final signature needed on that Epstein petition, right? Okay. So you've got Grijalva, but that's not the only special election that we want to talk about. There are 2 more opportunities that Democrats have to pick up a seat, and they're happening within weeks. So let's talk about those 2 special elections, what's happening, how close it is, and how you can get involved no matter where you live. All right, let's start with Texas, my home state. All right, right now, Texas 18th Congressional District is having a special election on, I want to get this date properly. I want to say that it is November 4th, but yes, November 4th. Okay. Now this happened because their representative, Representative Sylvester Turner, who was just a staple in the Houston community, he passed away, and so this seat needed to be filled. Now, here's some interesting news. Governor Abbott, the Texas governor, stalled on trying to call this special election. Why? Because you might think Texas and you might think, oh, that's a red seat. Who cares? No, no, no. 2 things. First of all, special elections are very unpredictable because of turnout and because people react a lot to what's happening in the news. So don't ever assume that anyone's going to win a special election. If there's a special election in your area, always show up if you can. But number 2, this is Harris County, Houston, Texas. Very, very blue. About 5 million people, largely Democratic. Okay, so because it's a Democratic seat, Governor Abbott decided that he would delay. And he had all these reasons. And one of the most recent interviews he gave right before he called the special election is he said, yeah, they're having problems over there. I've heard talk of long lines, running out of ballots, and not being able to count all of the ballots in one day. You mean high turnout? So Harris County has higher turnouts in their elections, so they don't deserve to have elections anymore. Great logic. So he waited over a month after Representative Turner passed away to call the special election. Representative Turner passed away early March. He did not call the election until early April. All right, so that election was called to happen in November 4th. So right now, we are only a couple of weeks away from that election. All right. Ballots are going to be going out at any time. So if you are in Texas, if you have friends in Texas, if you know people anywhere near that Houston area, please start posting about this. Ask people to check their Secretary of Elections, find out where they're supposed to vote. It could be different in a special election. So you definitely want to check your polling place, find out if you got an early ballot, all of the things we want to definitely mobilize. Let me give you a rundown of who is running. All right. So I'm going to do a quick rundown of the top 4 people here. Right now, we've got Jolanda Jones, who was a former Texas state representative. If you were to Google Jolanda Jones and be like, she looks familiar, there could be a couple of reasons for that. Number one, she got a lot of airtime during this recent situation that some of you might remember with the lack of quorum when the Texas Democrats left the state because they were trying to prevent the Texas legislature from passing some awful legislation. And, ultimately it didn't succeed, but they tried and they fought. And she was on camera a lot during that time. But the other reason you might recognize Jolanda Jones is she was a candidate on Survivor. She was a contestant in 2004. But in real life, she focuses mostly on social justice. She is a lawyer. And so she is one of the contenders for this race. Then you have Amanda Edwards, who's a former Houston City Council member. She ran in the 2020 US Senate primary, so she got a lot of visibility there. And so she is also got raising a lot of money because she has those networking connections. And that's Amanda Edwards, former Houston City Council member. You also have Christian Menefee. Christian Menefee, I think, works yes, he's the acting Harris County attorney. He's gotten a lot of endorsements. So you have visibility, you have money, you have endorsements. A lot of people with a lot of things here. Christian Menefee received endorsements, I believe, from Colin Allred and some other high-profile Democrats. And then you also have a Republican running, well, you have several running, but I'm just doing the top ones right now. Carmen Maria Montiel. She's a businesswoman, a media personality. She's the leading GOP contender, and she's focusing on economic growth and jobs. And here's the thing. Who's winning right now? If I were to list them all out, I'm telling you, there's like 30 people running in this race. Here's what's weird about this Houston race that you should know about this Texas 18 special congressional, if you want to Google and learn more. There's something really weird about this and unique in Texas, which is it's not Republicans running against Republicans and Democrats running against Democrats. It's more like what you would see in a lot of mayor's races. Everybody runs, it's a free for all. And then the top 2 vote getters, they move on to the final election, which I believe the runoff is going to be in December. So who's winning right now? Depends on who you ask, because candidates are releasing their own polls. So, Christian Menefee says he's tied with Jolanda Jones. Jolanda Jones issued her own poll from another company that says she's winning by 7 points. And then a public media company issued their poll. But here's the thing, it's very close. Top 4 people are separated from top to bottom by less than 5 points. And that includes the Republican candidate that's leading. And 27% of people voting are undecided. So if you want to do something useful, this is a race that, while their population is huge, every vote definitely will matter in a special election. I'm going to tell you all this now. Right now, we are not officially in any of these races, but I will disclose if over the next few days, we might, as the political fixer team, get involved behind one of these candidates. So we'll disclose that if it happens. But for now, I just want you to make your own decisions on who to back. And right now, we've got different people that you can post on social about. You could research and do your favorites, or just find an article about them all and share it and ask other people to make decisions. You could give to them. They've all got their websites and their fundraising sites, of course. You just Google Texas special election congressional or Texas 18 special, whatever you want to Google there. You could help them fundraise. You could call people or message people that live in the area and make sure they have a plan to vote, because again, this is just a couple of weeks from now. This is not November of next year. This is just a couple of weeks from now. This is from Texas. All right. Before we pivot to Tennessee, I want to ask any of you that might have a stronger opinion on this or more knowledge about it, right? So are any of you planning to get involved in this at all, whether it's vote or share this information? And if so, do you have a favorite candidate or something you feel like we should know about one of the other candidates? So I see Veronica Kennard saying, if I had a vote, I would vote for Jolanda. Love that you're willing to share that with us. Thank you. I see, hold on, one of you is making calls. Lynn is already started making calls for the DNC, and tonight, that's amazing. Thank you for doing that. So it says the Houston Chronicle just endorsed Menefee. That's from Brianna. All right, I love this. So many different comments here. I'm scrolling through, so they're sharing things here. Um, all right, we've got a lot of comments still on the government shutdown. We will circle back to that if we have time, right? Um, so you know, Square Foot Guarding for You is shouting out people making calls. Yes. Cian Jones saying encouraging Texans to vote no on amendments. I'm not familiar with amendments, but good call. Definitely. I didn't know they were sneaking amendments in there. They're so tricky. All right. So definitely Texas is on the radar. So let's do our math now, right? So once Grijalva is sworn in, we're at 219 to 214, which means we only need 5 votes to start controlling certain conversations, including the budget conversations. Assuming that Houston, Texas stays Democratic, which we hope it does, then we're down to only 4 votes because it'd be 219 to 215. So if this continues for several weeks, then we could have another person that can cast their vote. But there's another story we've got to cover that those of you that have been following Tennessee asked me to mention. So we're going to dive into that. And again, if you're just joining us, this is Political Fixer Live. We're talking about the shutdown, we're talking about the special elections and how they might impact the shutdown. And then if you stick with us, we've got a salacious, gossipy story having to do with DeSantis at the end of the program. So, oh, 17 amendments in Texas. Are you kidding me? Good Lord. All right. Just is it Zwala? Is it Zoila? I don't know if I'm supposed to how I'm supposed to pronounce it, but Zwala Unstoppable says vote no on all. So I think Brianna Cirque is seconding that emotion, saying vote no on all the amendments. So lots of stuff to cover in Texas. Let me tell you a little bit about what's going on in Tennessee because there's a little bit of high drama here as well. So, with the other special elections we were talking about, with the case of Arizona and in Texas, it was because a congressional representative passed away while serving. And so it was very unexpected, and people reacted, in some cases, being accused of reacting slowly, but reacted nonetheless with special elections. But that's not the case in Tennessee. Tennessee is a unique bird in this situation. A representative that I honestly never paid any attention to whatsoever, Mark Green, used to serve in the Tennessee seat. I believe it is 7 that is up for special election currently. Now, their special election is going to happen in December, but it's the why that I find really interesting if you like gossip. So, according to an expose, and I want to give you guys the site that I found this on and the author. And I double checked stuff here and I was able to independently source almost all of this before we came on the air. So this website I have never heard of before, but it stands for News of the United States, Notice, Notus. It's Notice. Cute. Notice.org, News of the United States.org. And the author here is Reese Gorman, as in Amanda, Gorman. All right, so Mark Green was serving in Congress. Apparently, according to his financial disclosures, very wealthy Republican guy on a lot of committees, had a lot of soft, quiet power. He wasn't someone that we paid attention to in the news. He was pretty safe in his seat. He was getting to kind of pull a lot of strings and things. And then something started to happen. According to multiple sources that have come forward, people would schedule meetings with him, like lobbyists would schedule meetings with him or his staff. And instead of talking about pending legislation or votes or issues, he would ask them if they were looking to get a job in South America. And this type of stuff continued to happen and chatter continued to rise. And it started to gain more attention when he started missing votes because he wasn't in Congress where he was supposed to be in Washington, D.C., where we were paying him to do his job. Instead, he was in Guyana. What's in Guyana? I'm sure it's very nice, but the thing that's there is oil. Lots and lots and lots and lots of oil. And according to the very sudden resignation of Mark Green that happened, he said he got a business offer that was too good to pass up. Whew. All right, Mark Green, you do you. We look forward to you going to Guyana, getting your super lucrative oil job. And, if you meet a prince that if you forward 50 emails, you get $1 million along the way, Good luck to you. Maybe you'll get a free pair of Levi's if you get 3 people on your chain mail. I don't know. But whatever big opportunity that you have in Guyana, Godspeed. In the meantime, that leaves a vacant seat, a vacant Republican seat. Now, normally you might be like, who cares? Big deal. Let me tell you why you should care. Number one, special elections are unpredictable. Anything can happen. And right now, you're talking about having one when all of this chaos is happening and the polls are showing that people think it's Republicans' fault, including other Republicans, right? So, how deep is this hole if Democrats want to claw out of it? It is an R plus 10, meaning that if you ran generic Democratic candidate against generic Republican candidate, that likely a Republican candidate would come out 10 points ahead of a Democratic candidate. However, in the special elections since 47 has taken office, would anyone like to guess the number? Again, just a little math on this show. Guess the number that Democrats are outperforming in special elections, meaning normally they do here, but they're doing better right now. So they need 10 points, right? They're outperforming in special elections by 14, right? 14. We are outperforming by 14 points, meaning how do we know this? So let's get insider baseball for just a second, because you look at how those districts normally go, right? You look at their other congressional races, you look at the presidential race and how that was, and you look at how it normally would go. And then you say, well, Kamala Harris normally got 52% here in this district, but this special election, the candidate got 66%, or whatever the case might be, right? So Democrats are outperforming by 14 points. They only need 10 points. So don't sleep on Tennessee. Let me give you the candidates. All right, on the Republican side, this is more traditional. They've done their respective party primaries. Now it's a Republican versus a Democrat, unlike the Texas race we talked about yet. So they've already done their first round. This is it. This is the enchilada that we are fighting for here. And it's on December 2nd. Sounds like a long time from now. It is not. December 2nd, and they do early voting and they do mail ballots. So ballots are going to be going out. Early voting is going to start within weeks. All right. So we're talking about Matt Van Epps on the Republican side. He is a former Tennessee Department of General Services commissioner. I have no idea what that job does, but it sounds very important. He's a West Point grad. He served in the National Guard, veteran. So he is a staunch 47 conservative, emphasizing border security, America first. He's gotten the endorsement from 47, the endorsement from Jim Jordan. Oh, lovely. Right. So this is a guy that you're getting what you would think you would get, a guy wrapped in a MAGA flag. So that is Matt Von Epps. He is not running a moderate campaign. He is basically saying that he's going to go in and continue to vote alongside with Johnson and Trump. So then you've got Afton Ben. Please forgive me if I am mispronouncing her name, but I'm going to spell it for you. It is Afton, Aftyn, and then the last name, I'm pronouncing it Ben, it's Behn. She is the Democratic nominee. She was a state representative in the Tennessee House, and she is a community organizer and social worker. She beat quite a few other Democrats in order to win this nomination here. So she must have some visibility in the state, even though she's a fairly new representative. She is emphasizing reproductive rights, and in fact, she is a plaintiff in a case that is challenging the Tennessee law that restricts adults from assisting minors seeking abortion. All right, so what does that mean? That means this woman is in the fight. So you don't have two people racing to the middle. You have two people that are like, no, I'm blue Dem. No, I'm red MAGA. This is going to be a bellwether race, in my opinion. She also is focusing on grassroots mobilization, social services, healthcare, improving infrastructure, and then representing different suburban and urban voices within the district. All right. So how can you help? First of all, same thing with Texas, where tell people it's happening. But I'm going to ask you to do one other bit of homework here. If you create any social content at all, if you write a blog, if you do a podcast, I think you need to make the case that this race is winnable. Because I feel like when people hear Tennessee, they hear that it's R plus 10, they might give up on it. And if you're going to flip a seat, a special election is the best time to try it, right? So if you create content, I'm going to ask you to create some content and share with people the fact that this race is happening and the fact that it is winnable. But I'm going to also tell you, no matter how much money you have, if you have any money to give to this race, this is not the type of race that is getting bazillions of dollars. A lot of people aren't paying attention to this race. So if you're going to give 10 or $20, it would make a huge difference in this race. Sometimes it feels like, oh my gosh, they're sitting on $50 million. They do not need my paycheck. This one is not like that. The fundraising totals that we know so far are fairly low because people aren't paying attention to this race. And that's on both sides. So there's definitely something that you can do. And let's look at that math again. If Tennessee flips Democratic, it's a big if, but if it flips Democratic, then that means that Republicans would have 219 people in office and Democrats would have 216. We'd only be down 3 votes. Okay. So what do we do with those 3 votes? Because we still need Republicans. We're going back to the shutdown conversation. We're going down to the talk about Medicare and health care and all these things. How do we get Republican votes? Well, I might have math that would surprise you. For our last part of this segment, I want to tell you that there's 2 Republicans that are going against the grain. We mentioned one of them last week, and one of you mentioned her earlier in the program, Marjorie Taylor Greene. Marjorie Taylor Greene says, quote, "I'm carving my own lane." She did some social posting about how her children, her adult children, are going to suffer, as well as the rest of her constituents, with these increased premiums or lack of access to healthcare. She said that she is frustrated with everyone on her side on this issue. She says not a single Republican in leadership is talking to us about this. She says that the Republican strategy over the shutdown and subsidies is, quote, and this is Marjorie Taylor Greene saying this, "shameful, disgusting, and traitorous." Ooh, so that made some headlines. And then Speaker Mike Johnson was like, no, she's just upset. It's fine. Listen, and this is literally what he said. He said, "I had a thoughtful conversation with her on the phone." And he says, "Marjorie doesn't serve on those committees, the healthcare committees. So I offered to have her come in the room and be part of that discussion if indeed she wants to do that. Because if there's anything that calms down an angry woman, it's telling her that she doesn't know what she's talking about and that you'll educate her to get her to calm down and fall in line." Did it work? No. Speaker Johnson's tactic did not work to quiet Marjorie Taylor Greene. And I know you'd be shocked to hear that this guy's so charismatic, right? For those of you that have heard him speak. So he said, no, we've had a conversation. She's good. Marjorie's good. I'm going to let her come in the room with the grownups. It's going to be fine. Apparently that didn't work because then Marjorie Taylor Greene said that GOP men in Congress are weak. She said, okay, I want to get this quote. She says, "My district knows I ran for Congress trashing Republicans. They voted for me because they agreed with that. My district is not surprised." So she doesn't think she's going to take an electoral hit striking out at Republicans. And all fun aside, because I do love the bickering and the gossip, that is an important note that all of you should file away. That someone, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who represents Ruby Red, Georgia, does not believe she's going to take a political hit if she speaks out against Republicans in office right now. So make a note of that because I think it's point. She says, "A lot of men here in the House are weak. There's a lot of weak Republican men, and they're more afraid of strong Republican women. They're always trying to marginalize the strong Republican women that actually want to do something and actually want to achieve. Jealousy might be part of the dynamic. They're always intimidated by stronger Republican women because we mean it and we will do it and we will make them look bad." I've seen some reactions here. I see Cynthia Fontaine saying, "I never in my life thought I would agree with anything Marjorie says." Yeah. So she is saying that she is not moving forward on anything else that doesn't include healthcare. So back to our math board here. I feel like I need, who's that kid in khakis or that guy in khakis on MSNBC? Like we need to tally all of this up. But if we're looking at our math here, without Tennessee, if you take away Marjorie Taylor Greene out of their column, 219 to 218, and then you bump up Democrats to 216. One more. Okay. Now, let's talk about Kevin Kiley. Who? Great question. He's a guy whose name you might want to learn. I didn't know who he was because there's over 400 members of Congress, and Kevin Kiley apparently is one of them. And this is where we're going to wrap up this segment, but I do think this is important, and then we're going to pivot to our story we promised on Florida. But let me just tell you about this one other Republican vote that might be up for grabs in Congress if Democrats want to hijack this conversation on the budget, and they could if the votes go a certain way. So Kevin Kiley is a representative in California, and he is vocally speaking out about what's happening. He said that the shutdown by Republicans is embarrassing. It was the wrong decision, that they need to come to some sort of agreement and at least show up. When people are not here, these conversations aren't taking place. That allows the two sides' rigid positions to calcify. Plus, all the things we were supposed to be getting done and working on are not getting done. Valid point, Kevin. You guys are getting paid and you're not showing up to work. You might not be getting paid today, but you're eventually going to get that paycheck and you're not doing your job. Kevin has been extremely vocal. Again, we're talking about Kevin Kiley in California being extremely vocal, saying that he stands against what Mike Johnson is doing. He is worried about healthcare for his district and that he is not afraid of speaking out against what's happening. There, you might be like, yeah, sure, but Republicans always come home. They always vote with, their party eventually. Here's why this one might be different. You guys know that in California, there's that ballot proposition this November, another special election that you should be paying attention to redraw the lines in California for congressional representation. This was in response, of course, to Texas and other states saying they're going to redraw their lines. We've been following this story some on this program. I know some of you have posted about it. If that proposition goes through, Kevin is without a job. Kevin has 0 F's to give. Kevin has nothing to lose. So Kevin might be going out with a bang. He was already upset. He tried to persuade people quietly, he said. And then he says, you're not going to, persuade anyone to do things differently if you keep your feelings quiet. He was against this redistricting, thinking that it was ultimately a battle that they were going to lose across the country. And he's in California and he's against this shutdown and he's against moving it forward without medical care for his constituents. So Kevin might actually vote Dem. And if that happens, and Marjorie Taylor Greene happens, 219 becomes 217. And that means that Democrats would then have the votes that they need in order to control this conversation, to hijack this conversation. It's a lot of ifs in that conversation. There's a lot of ifs in that scenario, but you guys can make it happen. So let's run through them. Here is your homework before we wrap for the night. Here is your homework. Number 1, share information about these special elections, right? So you're going to want to share about Texas, which is happening November 4th. You're going to want to share about Tennessee, which is happening December 6th. And ballots for many people go out early, and there is early voting in both states. So you're going to want to make sure that people are following the elections, that they know that they're happening. And if you can, talk about why A, they are winnable, and B, why it's important that we win. These numbers, every vote matters right now. Every vote matters. All right. And the other thing that you can do is you can start congratulating people that are standing with us. I've got another person. If you want to burn up his congressional line with thank you for standing with us, it is Kevin Kiley. Meet yourself a new congressman while you can, because it sounds like Kevin's days might be numbered if Proposition 50 moves forward, which, yes, I am a fan of Proposition 50. All right. We have had a good show, but I promised you gossip and I will give it to you. This is Insider Baseball that I'm bringing to you from Florida. We're at 60,000 likes on a Tuesday where we talked about some pretty heavy stuff. government shutdowns and medical subsidies and math and special elections. And I know this stuff is a little bit hard to wade through, but I think the theme really of this show was to try to bring you some understanding of some of this stuff. Because one of the ways that they keep us quiet or keep us from weighing in or keep us from really paying attention is to make it so confusing. And then on top of that, you've got active lies that are happening all the time that are being said unchecked in mainstream media. So I'm hoping if you started with us at the big top of the hour, and if not, you can catch us on YouTube. It's available within a few hours of the program ending. It'll be on our YouTube channel at Political Fixer. So you can rewind, fast forward what you need to do. But here's what I'm hoping you learn tonight. I hope you understand now what's actually required in the House and the Senate for the shutdown, because it is very confusing. House needs a simple majority, could be a big bill or a little bill, but Senate needs 60 votes, which means they need Democrats and Republicans to talk to each other. You understand why they're actually fighting, which is not just about, spending as this big concept, but the healthcare real consequences that are happening right now and that'll continue to happen and increase the devastation with millions of Americans from now through the end of the year. Then on top of that, the real reason why the congresswoman isn't getting sworn in and why they're delaying special elections, which is to reduce representation in Congress by people that might vote against them, and maybe because of those pesky Epstein files. And we're going to stay on top of that story as well. And as we continue, I promised you some dessert after your dinner. You guys did an excellent job of eating your mathematical vegetables. Let me tell you a story that is happening in Florida. And I know we're running late, so I promise to keep this quick, but I think you'll want to hear this. Suppressing the will of the voters and representation at all is not unique just to the federal government. In fact, it's happening right here in the state of Florida. Now, in full disclosure, I want to put my political fixer hat on and tell you I am not neutral in this story. I've been called in and I'm trying to help fix this situation. So I want to disclose that I am actively trying to help a candidate get elected here, and we'll talk more about him at the end. So I'm not neutral, but I am going to present the facts of what's happening. All right. Good old DeSantis. Gotta hate him. Okay, on August 12th, DeSantis appointed a new lieutenant governor. He was at the time a state senator named Jay Collins. Jay Collins got promoted to lieutenant governor. Yay, promotion for you. Congrats all around. Okay, well, that left the seat vacant, not because of someone passing away, but because of a promotion, right? So, presumably planned because you knew you were going to promote him. Remember how I told you that people absolutely were protesting and writing articles and all this stuff because Abbott waited a month to call his special election? Yeah, this has been happening since August 12th. We are now at October 14th. We are over 2 months in, and there's not even a whisper of a special election being called, which means that seat remains vacant. And over 500,000 people are in that district in Florida. He refuses to call a special election at all. Wonder why? We're going to get to that in just a second. So, for more than 60 days, this seat has been vacant. You're like, okay, yeah, but it's Florida, which is fair. But Florida in a lot of things, but historically, this is highly unusual. The average is about 5 to 10 days within a resignation that special election gets put on the calendar. And here we are 60 days out and he's doing nothing. So the ACLU filed a lawsuit against Governor DeSantis saying you can't just leave people without representation. Now, in Florida, our legislature is very seasonal and we are hitting our season. So committee meetings are starting now. The session will start in January, which means you're missing a vote in the Senate of the state of Florida. And we've got a lot of crises here, just like a lot of you guys do, but we've got hurricane payouts that never happen and housing, which is insane. We took a huge hit when for some reason Canadians didn't want to come here anymore. The list goes on and on and on. Real problems that are impacting real people, and they're not going to have a voice, right? So the ACLU sued them and they petitioned the court to please make DeSantis do his job and call the special election. So your timeline, mid-August, he promotes this guy. Again, wasn't unplanned. You knew you were going to promote him. He does not call a special election for about 2 months, and then at the beginning of August or end of September, ACLU filed that lawsuit. Now here we are in the middle of October. There's still no special election called, and you still have to have the election. And then in January, session starts, and we're not going to have anyone. So I mentioned, hey, there might be a reason for this, just besides the fact that DeSantis is a corrupt scumbag. So Jay Collins was a well-liked, respected state senator as a Republican in this Senate district. But it's a very mixed district. And one of the reasons Collins kept his job and kept his nose is because he did not stand out as one of the extremists. This district is only about an R plus 5. Remember, we talked about R plus 10, R plus 5, about 5 points difference. Also, Florida is kind of weird in a lot of ways, but one of the reasons is because we have almost a third of our population that is registered as independent. We call them NPAs here, non-party affiliated. And you never know which way those people are going to swing. So you combine all of these elements. You have a situation where it's closer than average. It's only a 5-point difference. You have a huge group of independents that are upset by a lot of what's happening. DeSantis is cozying up again with 47, all of this other stuff. And the stuff we talked about earlier, a special election right now across the board, state and federal, favors Democrats by 14 points, which means that the Democrats could win this one. So who's running? I'm so glad you asked. All right. So I'm going to tell you again, I'm completely biased. I am actively trying to help get Brian Nathan elected. So on the Democratic side, there is a veteran union organizer, dad, family guy, great wife, the everyday working guy who has been taking a leadership position in his union now for years. So he's been in Tallahassee working on policy. He just hasn't been elected as a state representative. So he's got experience, but he's not a politician. He's an actual worker who understands rights and policies and legislation. And he's a union member and a veteran. And again, I just think is a great guy. So if you get a chance, please look up Brian Nathan for state senator. If you get a chance and feel like you want to give to his campaign, this is a local race for all intents and purposes. We would love it if you would elevate it because we think a special could be called at any time, but it would be great to flip this seat and it would be really great to take something away from DeSantis. But I would be remiss if I did not also mention the Republican that is running, Mr. Lionheart. I know very little about Mr. Lionheart. I've never met him. I know that on his Facebook page, he says that one of his top commitments is to honor Mr. Trump, and he's extremely MAGA. I know that on his campaign filings, he hasn't raised any money. He loaned his campaign $50,000 and then gave himself back $25,000 a few weeks later. I know that about him. And his website is down. It no longer works anymore. So it's really hard to find things except for on his Facebook page. So I went on the Wayback Machine and I was like, who is this guy? Where did he come from? And what was this website before? Like, if his website's down now, maybe I could pull up his website now. And I did. So I went into the archives to see what did he do before this. And he made Lion merchandise, cell phone cases, custom sneakers, shirts for queens. So he's a guy that likes his name, Lionheart. Yeah. He's a MAGA guy who's trying to make a difference for running for office. I do not know him. He could be a very nice man who just agrees with DeSantis and 47 on almost everything, which means we would probably disagree on many things. But I would like to reiterate my bigger, broader point. He might be a nice guy, but this seat is winnable, which is why I believe is the real reason DeSantis is not calling the special election. So here's what you can do. If you're able to give or highlight this race, I would appreciate it. The candidate would appreciate it. Florida would appreciate it. If you have other races you want us to talk about, we'd love to hear them. You can message us at Political Fixer here on this platform, or you can go to politicalfixer.com. These races matter. And you might say, well, it's a really Republican state. Why should we care? Because if this state flips, you only need one more to flip in the entire state, and the Republican supermajority is broken. Yeah, these are real big stakes. So if you want to show DeSantis, that you don't like him, that's one way. You could also talk to people about what's happening. And if you know people living in Florida, ask them to call the governor's office and demand that they call a special election in this race. All right, we covered a lot of ground here. I promised you special elections, and I even gave you a bonus one. I want to get some final thoughts for all of you. We got 70,000 likes this evening and a lot of great feedback. I'm seeing a lot of chatter going back and forth. I see a lot of people talking about the expertise that you have on how this healthcare situation, the lack of subsidies and government funding is going to impact your neighborhoods and your communities. A lot of you talking about wanting me to remind you to speak up, you post on social. If you can go to the protests and you feel safe and able, definitely do so. If you feel like you can speak out in other ways, either against certain elected officials by ringing their phones and sending emails and posting and writing articles, or speaking for those that are standing up for people, then definitely do that. Make sure you raise awareness on what's happening with these special elections, particularly in Tennessee and Texas. Really easy to remember. Two-step here: Tennessee and Texas, right? Um, Veronica is saying, I'm hoping something shakes soon. You and me both, sister girl. Brianna, thank you for the kindness as usual. I appreciate it. Penny, you're back on my feet. Penny, welcome home. Veronica also wants me to remind all of you ducklings that early enrollment for the Affordable Care Act is November 1st. And listen, some of you might be racing that clock. So keep an eye out for your enrollments with your healthcare insurance. I know it's not the most exciting thing to talk about, but trust me, as someone who just had major surgery and was able to do so without bankrupting my family because of insurance, I know it's important. So whatever you can do to get that coverage, stay focused on it if you can. And we're sending well wishes and just however we can support you for those that you're going to be priced out. Like, we're with you, whatever we can do to support you. We've got some questions. How do average people without money run for office? Mel, that is such a great question. I think we should definitely talk about that more on another episode. But the short answer is it's a lot harder for them because they can't just put in $50K of their own money, which is why when you give your $10 or $20 to these independent and local candidates, it really makes a difference. Or if you chip into a congressional race with an upstarting candidate that is not independently wealthy, they might still raise less money than their wealthy opponents, but they get to show the number of people who gave. I know not everyone's in a position to do that. And just like protesting is not usually my flavor, maybe donations aren't your flavor either. Not trying to pressure you, but just saying that the dollars do matter in a lot of races more than you think that they would. All right. This has been a great show. A lot packed in. I gave you a ton of homework. Here's our closing thoughts. First of all, thank you. Thank you for joining us on behalf of myself, the Political Fixer team, especially Sarah and Jay Robot. We really appreciate all of you being a part of our evening, and we hope that you got something out of this program. I know it's not the easiest of topics, but the other thing I want you to do is I want you to think some positive thoughts. We didn't get a chance to do a positive rundown this evening because it was so much content to do, but good things are happening. People are standing up and speaking out, right? And if you ever need that moment of zen, just watch those little Portland inflatable videos. Just watch them dancing around and rubbing their little noses in front of the ICE officials. It's quite invigorating. There are good people doing amazing things across this country every single day. So turn off the depressing news, connect with family and community members like our amazing Political Fixer community, and just remember that people still out there care and they're doing great things. And I know that includes many of you as well. I hope that you take care of yourselves and take care of each other. Mark your calendars for next Tuesday, 9 p.m. Eastern. We're going to be here, same bat channel, same bat time. I'm Shauna Presley Vircher, the Political Fixer, and I will see you all soon. Bye, everyone. Good night.